We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday. It's my first day back since traveling to Duluth with my wife and my son and my granddaughter. And it was a hell of a trip. We taught my granddaughter the term road trip. Now she knows all about it. Never been on one before. She'd never been to Duluth, Minnesota. It happens to be a very popular place with my family. Both my sons went to college in Duluth for a time. And it's a beautiful place. If you've never been there, you should go. Lake Superior, it's a beautiful place. It's a great place to go. And for us, it's not that far. It's a couple of hours. But when I heard we were going to get a chance to take our granddaughter on a trip and just hang out with her 24/7 for a couple of days, I thought, awesome. This is fucking awesome. And it was awesome. But I got to tell you, having a little girl is a lot. It's a lot. Now, I've had two sons of my own, my wife and I, but we are whipped. We're tired after doing it. It was a lot of fun, though. We really enjoyed it. The kid is just funny as hell. I remember one time, I think I told this story. We were at a park and she saw a dog and she was just running for it. And the woman with the dog stopped her and said, "Now, listen, if you're going to go up and pet dogs, here's what you need to do. You need to say, 'Is your dog friendly? And can I pet it?'" Which is amazing because ever since that time, this kid has remembered that. And everybody she walks up to with the dog, she says the same thing. "Is your dog friendly? Can I pet him?" And she does it to every dog. Literally every dog we run into, and all the people are generally pretty impressed that this little 3-year-old is so polite, and she catches on to things and she remembers it. But there was one time we're walking down the boardwalk on the lake. We stayed in a hotel on the lake, and as we're walking down the boardwalk, her dad is holding her, and she sees a dog and a couple walking the opposite direction. Now, she doesn't realize that people are going places. So this couple keeps walking with the dog, and my son keeps walking with my granddaughter. And as the couple with the dog passes by, she says, hey, is your dog friendly?" And the people laugh because she's kind of precocious, and they keep walking, and my son keeps walking. And then as they get a little further apart, she goes, can I pet him?" And of course, they're so far away, it's not going to happen. They're going where they're going. My son and I and my wife and my granddaughter go in the opposite direction. And her last attempt to try to get a chance to pet this dog, she goes, I'm friendly." Well, of course you're friendly, you little goof. But we had a great time. We had a great time. And it was a little weird for me because I knew I wasn't going to have the chance to record a fresh podcast, but I wanted something there. So on Monday, we had the TikTok live I did. Hopefully that worked out well. And then before I left on Sunday, I did another podcast talking about things to come and that sort of thing. Seemed like a pretty normal podcast, but I'm really glad I'm back today because so much shit happened yesterday. I mean, just when you thought you heard the biggest news story, another one came out that was bigger, and then another one came out that was bigger, and then yet another one came out that was bigger. So we've got a lot of shit to talk about on this particular podcast. I've also got a ton of emails too. I'm just going to go over real briefly some of the things we're going to talk about, and then I'll get into the emails. Biggest news story: Jack Smith offers immunity to Mark Meadows in the January 6th trial in DC. Now, this is interesting because we knew that Mark Meadows was not on the list of unindicted co-conspirators. And we thought that's strange. We also thought it's strange that Mark Meadows had been pretty quiet as of late. I think most of us presumed that he flipped, and it turns out he did. Now, at first I thought, well, that just happened today. He finally flipped at the last moment, but apparently this has been going on for a while. He's had 3 meetings with Jack Smith and the grand jury and all of that. So this has been going on a while. It's just that we found out about it today. I think ABC broke the story. That's an interesting thing. There are a lot of things to consider with this, and we'll talk more about it in a bit. A couple things to keep in mind. People think he's just flipping on Donald Trump here. He's not. Mark Meadows was the conduit between Donald Trump and everyone else, especially on January 6th, sitting members of Congress, family members like Eric and Don Jr., not to mention those people surrounding him, people around him like Ginny Thomas, Roger Stone, those kinds of folks. So I'm thinking there's a lot of people, sitting members of Congress and people that have been connected with Donald Trump, they're a little fucking nervous right now. I got to believe that. And then down in Georgia, of course, we had Scott Hall, who flipped, some guy from Coffee County. Then we had Sidney Powell and Ken Cheesebro. They both flipped. And as I told you, when that happens, you're going to get a lot more people flipping. And somebody else did flip yesterday, Jenna Ellis, Donald Trump's lawyers. Now think about that. We've got 3 of Donald Trump's lawyers that have already flipped on him in the Georgia case. That's not good news. That's just not fucking good news. Donald Trump is in trouble. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Mark Meadows flipping on him in the DC case, it's all done. Mark Meadows knows where all the bodies are buried. He's got to testify to the best of his ability and tell the truth. Now, keep in mind, he got full immunity and he was in the top tier there. In order for him to get immunity, he had to give up a lot of shit. And in giving up that shit, he pretty much ended it for Donald Trump, at least in that case. Then, of course, we've got the whole thing with the Speaker of the House and the Republicans having a difficult time finding a Speaker of the House, a difficult time finding any candidate that can get 217 votes. Now, earlier yesterday, there was an announcement that after 5 tries behind closed doors, the Republicans nominated Tom Emmer for Speaker of the House. He's the guy that's from Minnesota. He's a Trump humper. He's an election denier. He's against abortion. He's against all of that stuff. I told you that he had no chance of getting 217 votes because even if MAGA voted for him, the reasonable folks would not. But it turned out he had no shot at all because the reasonable folks wouldn't vote for him. And it turns out Donald Trump hates Tom Emmer for some reason. Then in turn, MAGA hates Tom Emmer. So within 4 hours of being nominated, within 4 hours, he dropped out, said, fuck it, I don't have a chance here. I believe if he had gone for the vote because MAGA hates him, I would think that he would have gotten less votes than Jim Jordan got. He doesn't have a chance in hell of being elected Speaker of the House. So he just dropped out. He was unlike Jim Jordan, who didn't want to be embarrassed because he most certainly would have been embarrassed. Well, the Republicans didn't waste much time. They got another nominee, the guy who came in second place. Wow. So he's the guy that came in second place to Tom Emmer, and now they think he's got a chance. The only problem with him is he is a hardcore Trump humper. He voted to steal the 2020 election, not to certify the electoral vote. He wants a nationwide abortion ban. He opposes same-sex marriage, supports Trump's Muslim ban, and opposes marijuana legalization. Now, maybe MAGA will be all over that bastard and vote for him, but of course they have a small minority. And the reasonable folks are never going to vote for this dumb fuck. So one more time, I'm hearing that they're going to do the vote later today or noon today. Maybe it's not later for you. Maybe they've already done it. I don't see how he gets 217 votes. And who knows, he may drop out before then. And the last big news is that Michael Cohen testified in front of Donald Trump in the Letitia James lawsuit. Michael Cohen had to sit on the witness stand having Donald Trump mean mugging him and trying to intimidate him, but it apparently didn't work because Michael Cohen talked about a lot of shit about the crimes that Donald Trump committed, about the crimes that he committed for Donald Trump. It did not go well. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But for now, let's get to emails and then we'll get down to the business of the news. And some of the news will come into play in these emails. First one starts out, good morning, Mike. Longtime listener, blah, blah, blah. He said that. I didn't say that. Let me just give a little background. I'm a married father of 3, grandfather to 11. I got one and I can't keep up with her, so I give you a lot of credit. I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1963, placing me among the younger class of boomer. My lovely wife and I celebrated 40 years of marriage in January of 2024, or will celebrate 40 years of marriage 2024. I was thoroughly apoplectic until the 6/2015. I voted because it was my right, but never paid attention to politics because I felt my vote wouldn't matter. But when that Mango Mussolini made his presence known in politics, I knew this country just did not give a shit anymore. On to why I'm writing. I was at Mayer in Goshen, Indiana. It's a store. I was at Mayer in Goshen, Indiana today to get my COVID shot. And a young, very large and imposing man wearing a Trader Joe's shirt with a picture of the White House on it goes up to the counter to get a prescription for insulin for his mom, who I assume is on Medicare because the cost was $35. I normally do not engage with these individuals because, as you say, there's no money in it, but I felt I had to. So I said, you can thank President Biden for that price. And he stated at me, all 5'7" of me, and snorted in derision and stomped off. I'll feed off that for a week. Anyway, be well, Mike, and congratulations to your recent anniversary. Always, Tom. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. And, this is the thing. These people can't answer these questions. I see Trumplefucks being interviewed all the time, and they state the stupidest fucking things. And they have no basis in fact for these things. They just spew them out because that's how they've been trained by their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. Thanks again, Tom. Next one comes to us from Old Soul. Hey, Boomer, I love the podcast last night. It's always a treat to see you and Ed together. I've affectionately started calling you two the dynamic duo. I just saw your video titled Blame the Democrats. I couldn't agree with you more. MAGA has learned the art of talking out of both sides of their butts. They learned it from T. Rump. He consistently says, I alone can fix it, while at the same time saying he's a victim. Everyone who disagrees with him is out to get him. He has his own social media platform, holds rallies, and gives live interviews with dozens of microphones pointed at his pie hole while reporters hang on his every word. Yet he says he's being silenced and no longer has a First Amendment right. Well, now his gremlins in the House is doing the same thing. They blame Democrats for ousting McCarthy, then say the American people elected them to have the majority and lead. They say Democrats cause chaos by not working with them, then give interviews and press conferences saying they will never work with Democrats. After the last failed speaker vote, Marjorie Taylor Greene gave an interview saying, we are in this mess because 8 Republicans work with Democrats to oust Kevin McCarthy. She said we need to come together and figure out a solution for the American people. After that, she signed a motion to deny giving McHenry temporary authority to act as speaker so an aid package and budget can be passed. Every single Republican has said they need to elect a speaker so they can get on with doing the people's business. They've committed to working hard to ensure this happens. However, in the 19 days, more than that now, since Republicans vacated the speaker's chair, they've only worked 8 days. Well, if you can call counting votes, secret meetings, and threats working. The problem with talking out of both sides of your butt is it only works when you're in the minority. You don't have to take responsibility. You can point the finger and deflect blame when the puck stops with you. That tactic simply doesn't work when you're in the majority. The party of personal responsibility needs to take responsibility. They need to either step up and lead, or they need to admit they're in over their heads. Put the American people first and give control over to the Democrats when they can go back to complaining to the right-wing media, pointing fingers and deflecting blame. I don't think they're selfless enough to do that, so they'll keep putting themselves and the American people through this drama until 2024. We'll continue to have front row seats to the utter incompetence of the Republican Party. And in 2024, the American people will decide who they trust to govern. I have a feeling it won't be the Republicans. They were given an opportunity to put up or shut up. They didn't shut up, but they definitely squandered the opportunity, and they squandered it on full display of the world to see. Light is the best disinfectant. Thanks, Boomer. Old soul. You know, I said that when they won the majority in the House, and it was a slim majority. I said they would have been better off losing the majority than having a slim majority, because I knew they weren't going to do anything. And like Old Soul says, they're more prone to complaining about what the other party doesn't do. And unfortunately, that's what they're trying to do now, in spite of the fact, as Old Soul said, they're in the majority. Like I've said before, when they passed the COVID relief bill, not one Republican voted for it. When they passed the infrastructure bill, not one Republican voted for it. And now they're bitching about the fact that the Democrats are partisan. Well, not only are they partisan, but the candidates they've put out, nobody of a reasonable mind could vote for them. So that means Democrats wouldn't vote for them. They're going to put this new guy up, Mike Johnson. He's not going to get the votes, and they'll keep dicking around with this. I don't know if they'll ever come to a decision to work with the Democrats, but that's what it's going to take. The only other thing that could happen is that a few of the Republicans, 5 or 6, go to the Democrats and say, fuck it, let's just get this done. That could happen. That may be the only thing that can happen to get a Speaker of the House. Keep in mind, if we don't have some resolution to the budget come mid-November, the country shuts down. What a great Christmas present to offer this country from the Republicans. All right. Let's move on to the next email. Old Soul, thank you very much. There's another one from Old Soul coming up. Hi, Mike. I thought about Judge Chutkan and her stay of the gag order. While we don't think it makes sense, what if she's testing Dirty Diaper Donnie? Everything I'm seeing about her original gag order says it should be upheld on appeal. I'm wondering if she wasn't or isn't watching to see how Donnie reacts to being off the leash. If he goes completely berserk and gets unhinged on his shitty social media app, maybe it will give her cause to hit him with a larger gag order. She could look at him when he loses his appeal and say, without this gag order, you couldn't behave like a normal person, so here's a complete gag order. And if you violate this like you did in New York, it won't be a pittance of a fine, but actual jail time for contempt of court. If she's setting a trap for him, you know Donnie is dumb enough to fall into it. Absolutely. And, you know, I feel the same way as you did. When I found out she stayed the gag order, I thought, what the fuck are you doing? But here's what's important to remember. It doesn't stop the gag order. It just stays the gag order. And all that means is if he says something during that period, there is no way to hold him accountable because it stayed. But I think you're right. There is a trap being set for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is enough to fall head first into that motherfucker. And this may be a way for her to show the appeals court, see, this motherfucker can't be trusted. Judge Chutkan and a lot of these judges and a lot of these prosecutors may do some things that don't make sense to us. We have to trust the fact that they know what they're doing, and they've been doing pretty well so far. So I guess I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to watch and see what happens. All right. Next one. Yeah, next part of the email, same email. I read an article about how 7 of the 8 Republicans offered themselves up if it meant getting Jim Jordan Speaker. Now Jordan is out as Speaker nominee, but maybe the Republicans should take them up on their offer and oust them, like I said in my last email. I keep seeing Trumplefucks posting about how Sidney Powell or Kenneth Chesbro plea deals will help Donald Trump. That's what they always say. If this bad things happen, it'll just help us. Like we're going to say, oh no, really? It's going to help you? So let's stop doing that. Not going to work. It's a childish strategy. Somehow in their feeble minds, they think everything will help Trump. Hell, I'd be surprised if after he's broke and convicted to essentially life in prison, they still aren't saying that this is somehow going to help Trump. Yeah, it's funny, with all the things they said that would be helpful to Trump, not one thing has helped Trump. Emailer goes on, I found something that Hawk pointed out very interesting. He noticed that while the foot soldiers like the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, or other Gravy SEALs are going to prison, we are starting to see at least some of the ringleaders only get probation. Thinking about that, if the Trumplefucks were intelligent, they'd realize that any of Trump's inner circle would throw any of the Trumplefucks under the bus to save themselves. That's true, but understand something. Even though there are people like Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesbro getting these deals don't go to everybody. Not everybody gets that opportunity. Usually the people first in line get them, and then there gets a point where there is no more deals. They don't need the deals. I mean, how many more deals do you need if you got Jenna Ellis, you got Sidney Powell, and Kenneth Chesbro? How many more do you need? And when they don't need them anymore, there aren't going to be any deals given. Now, I have to wonder if Mark Meadows may be cutting a deal in Georgia too. We haven't. He's in the 19 that are going to be tried. But if he's given up Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., why not Georgia? I mean, he's blown his wad. He's pissed off Donald Trump. We're still waiting to hear how he responds to this. But the fact of the matter is that he might as well flip in Georgia. That is, if Fani offers him a deal. She might find what he did too egregious and want to take that fucker to court. So I don't know if he will flip. By flipping in D.C., he's only taking care of one part of the problem. He's still got Georgia to worry about. And finishing up, he says, lastly, I saw that one day after being fined by Judge Engeron, dipshit Donnie was talking shit about the judge on Truth Social. The last episode had the judge threatening to toss Trump's diapered old ass in prison for contempt. I wonder if this will do it. Could you imagine the judge ordering Donnie held until he apologizes? Donnie couldn't do it. His ego couldn't take being forced to apologize to anyone. I mean, he said he's never even asked forgiveness from God because he never did anything. Yeah, he's not going to apologize to a judge. Finishing up, it says, this is going to be fun to watch. I have my beer and popcorn ready. Thanks, Eric. Eric is our listener from Iowa. And I agree. I think the gag order didn't have anything to say about talking shit about the judge. So that may not be a violation. I don't know. But things seem to be falling apart for Donald Trump. If there are some gag order issues, I suspect we'll be seeing them soon. When Jenna Ellis and Mark Meadows has flipped, this guy's going to be freaking out. He's going to be doing all kinds of shit. All right, the next email comes from Paul. When the judge decides to sentence for Trump's transgressions, will the piece of shit have to pay immediately, or can he appeal the decision? Is there any way he can get his hand-picked Supreme Court involved in state issue? I just recently started listening to you, and thank you for your insights and honesty. You have calmed my angst regarding the orange tub of shit, Paul. Can he appeal? Oh, yeah, of course he can appeal. But when we're talking about Georgia, he can only appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court. Can't go to the federal Supreme Court. Donald Trump's going to have a hard time with this. He doesn't have the governor on his side who happens to be a Republican. The evidence is pretty damning. And now with all these people flipping, he doesn't have a fucking prayer in hell. And even if he does try to appeal it, it's just a matter of time. It'll be pretty quick. Thanks for the email, Paul. All right. The next email. Hi, Boomer. I just heard on the live that you owned a recording studio. I used to own a recording studio. I think you'll enjoy this story, and I got it from a guy who knew the guy who was there, so I believe it. Okay. It's only mildly political if, like me, you had gotten to the point where the old Monday Night Football theme song with Hank Jr. was so kind of yeehaw, yuck, yuck, and it was aggravating. And I play banjo, for Christ's sake, but I think you know what I mean. Now, I love Hank Sr. He wrote all of those remarkable songs before he was 30 because he died at age 29, which is hard to believe. They say when he walked into a room, you could feel the loneliness come in with him. But Hank Jr. is basically a drunk, or he was anyway. He went into a studio to record the Monday Night Football theme song. He was drunk and belligerent and driving the sound engineers nuts. He kept bitching about the mics, and they let him try several. Finally, they'll tell him, we've got this vintage mic you could use. He says, yeah, get that. So the guy goes in the back, and before he brings that mic out, he puts it down in his underpants and practically has sex with it, gets very intimate with this mic. Walks right out and sets it up. And that's the mic that Hank had his face pressed against singing the MNF, or Monday Night Football theme we all listened to for 20 years. I'm immature enough to think that's freaking hysterical. Best, Garage Door Jeff. Having owned a studio and dealt with some childish musicians, I won't say I ever did that. But I did go out of my way to make things difficult for people if they were assholes. And then I made sure they never came back. But do I believe it? Yeah, I fucking believe it. Recording studio people and musicians who are involved. Every musician, well, I won't say every musician, because I deal with some of musicians that I like and appreciate. But a lot of musicians I dealt with back in the day were so fucking childish. I was representing this little girl one time. She was a singer. She was an outstanding singer, but every bit a diva. And she pulled together this band, and they were a bunch of ragtag guys. Actually, the drummer of the band ended up drumming for Prince and actually ended up being Prince's best friend and found him when he died. His name is Kirk Johnson. Great guy. Still know him. Good guy. But there were a lot of these musicians that were just pieces of shit. I got calls. I got calls at night saying, hey, I'm in jail. You got to get me out. I said, I'm not getting you out. And they said, well, you're our manager. I go, no, I'm the girl's manager. You call the girl and see what she wants to do, because I ain't involved in this shit. Anyway, I kind of digress there. Yeah, I believe somebody stuck the mic down their pants and then put it up in front of Hank Jr. And I agree. I think Hank Jr. is a fucking drunk and a belligerent piece of shit. Everything I've ever seen about him. All right. The next email. Good morning, Mike. During your TikTok live stream, some schmuck commented that the Democrats are more disliked than Putin. This is not the first time I've heard this sort of comment. Growing up in the 1960s and 70s, praising the USSR was deemed pinko or commie mentality. The expression better dead than red was a favorite political chants, especially with Republicans. Today's Republican seems to revel in Putin's manly persona and being swept up in the big red waves. Putin, a KGB idealist, wants to reanimate the USSR. His world is that of Lenin and Stalin. If he can get personal wealth for himself and his henchmen along the way, all the better. Trump sees this and says, yeah, I want some of that. Anyone who toadies up to Trump is not an American patriot. They are rubes who have been conned into joining a cult that, if successful, will reject 260 years of American idealism. Question is it a bad thing to add reading the obituary of Donald J. Trump to my bucket list? Thank you, Paul. It's not a bad thing, and we may be looking at that not too distant future. All you have to do, if you're old enough, you can go back to Ronald Reagan. Try to remember how much Ronald Reagan liked the Russians and the Russian leaders. Not too much. Republicans were hardcore against Russians, and the fact that they now are best buddies with them is confusing at best. All right. Next email comes from Pee Wee Pam. I'm curious how you got that name. Hello, Mike. Allow me to tell you how very much I enjoy your podcast. I also am a much older boomer, 76 years old, who was becoming very downhearted and disappointed by the nonsense going on in our government. Thank you sincerely for enlightening me with your wisdom. Also, I have turned my Gen X little sister onto you. We are all of a like mind. She tells me constantly how you give her hope. Thank you again, Mike. Continuing your outstanding work, Pee Wee Pam. Well, thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. And, I think when we talk about hope, whether it be a political situation or the future of our country, I think no matter what you do in life, you got to find the hope in every situation. There's always opportunities and there's always different angles to virtually anything. As I've told you before, and Pam, you've got to agree with me on this. In our lifetime, our long lifetimes, we've gone through many trials, tribulations, tragedies, and somehow we're still here. So logic would tell you that even if you're having a tough time, whatever age you are, you're likely to get past it. And what's that old Bible phrase? I think it's a Bible phrase, and this too shall pass. Nothing could be truer than that. You do what you do, you get through it, don't let it get you down, and keep moving forward, and you'll be all right. And the same can be said about our political problems. We've had bad situations before in this country, like the 60s, but we got through that. We'll get through this. Here's another one from Old Soul. Hey, Boomer, the TikTok podcast was fun. I think she's talking about the TikTok live I did. It's kind of a podcast. Oh, I see. No, what she's saying is me taking the TikTok live and making it a podcast because I'm a lazy bastard. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Old Soul. It was nice seeing you interact with the Boomer community live. Their questions about the NYC case were odd because T-Rump's already been found guilty on the main charges that could permanently shut him down and his organization. All we're watching is T-Rump show. He's pretending to be on trial when he already lost. This is only about penalties and other minor charges. I just wanted to remind your listeners of that. Thanks for what you do, Old Soul. Thank you, Old Soul. And that's absolutely right. Don't worry about the civil suit. That's a done deal. He's guilty. They've already determined that. They're just going to decide on what he's going to have to pay, such as, is he going to lose ownership of all his properties and all his businesses? Probably. I mean, you can't commit the crimes he committed and expect to continue to do business in New York or any other state where you committed these crimes. So fact of the matter is, it's a done deal there. And now with Mark Meadows flipping on him in DC, that's pretty much a done deal too. Donald Trump is done. There's no question. It's just a matter of us waiting for it to happen. Another email. Hi, Mike. I've been wanting to shoot you an email for more than a week, but never found time to do it. Today, in light of all the stuff going on, I had to make time. Let me start with the older stuff first. In reference to the Israel-Gaza nightmare, I, like you, didn't know much about the history other than it's been going on for quite some time. So I asked someone who was more well-versed in the subject. It began, according to the Bible, with Abraham. His wife couldn't give him a child, so she arranged for him to be with her handmaiden. The handmaiden got pregnant with Abraham's son, gave birth, and later Abraham sent her and her son away. After that, his wife was able to get pregnant and also bore him a son. There is where some of the story between God and Abraham, that his son with his wife would be king of Israel and his son with a handmaiden would govern over the Arab countries. Then fighting ensued, always regarding Israel, and it continued from there to present day. Apparently, per the Bible, Israel is the chosen country for his chosen people. This was a very condensed version. I do believe Biden is doing a phenomenal job with a horrific situation. He and his cabinet seem to be trying relentlessly to bring the temperature down over there. Hopefully, they can negotiate the freeing of more hostages before the ground war takes place. As we know, there were 2 other hostages let go. Now, on to today. The House is still a dumpster fire, and the least offensive guy they put forward for Speaker has withdrawn without a vote, supposedly due to crap Trump posted on Truth Social. He, Emmer, probably was one of the only Republicans any Democrat would get behind, so we're back to square one with the shutdown looming ever closer. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. Emmer isn't the least offensive. He's anti-abortion. He was an election denier. He did all the same shit all the other Trump-fucks did. He wasn't the least offensive. He was equally as offensive as any other Trump-fuck. Then the best news I've heard since idiot Trump got indicted, Jack Smith gave full immunity from prosecution to Mark Meadows. I'm so happy with this because he'll bring down not only Trump, but all those Congress members that assisted with January 6th. Those MAGA Trump-fucks and Trump himself must be quite literally shitting their pants right now. And as our guy Muscles and Nursing says, I love that for him. I feel like I need popcorn today. Gotta love it. Anyway, keep up the good work and keep having Ed on. I think your shows with him are my favorite. You two have such a great rapport with each other. I could listen to you guys all day, every day. Hugs, Deb. P.S. Hope you had a wonderful time with your granddaughter on your trip. I did. Also, as far as names we get called instead of grandma, I'm Yammy to my grandkids. I wanted to be Yaya, but my daughter said, no, Mom, you're not Yiddish. So she named me Yammy because I'm such a sweet potato, Yam. Although that didn't compliment my old body much. At least I know there's no one else with this name, LOL. I don't know. There's some strange names out there from kids. This one comes from Darren. I'm just giddy that Mark Meadows is rolling. What an asshole. Fucking bitch was part of the reason we are where we're at. He gets immunity. Okay, I would still love to see him trip and fall in the puddle of AIDS. Oh, well, at least Trump is done. Wow, shit is happening fast for that orange fat fuck. Can't wait to see who else rolls every day. Thanks, Boomer. Darren from Montana. All right. Boomer, I just saw Mark Meadowlark, thought Ed would like that, is singing like a bird to Jack Smith. When will he flip for Fonnie Willis? I really want some of these fools to stand tall with third rump. Fines and probations are crap. These people attempted to defraud, to lie, and steal the election from our country. I only wish these traitorous fucks had to go on national television and read aloud their letters to the people of Georgia and also to admit publicly that they lied about election fraud, that Trump lost the election, that the election was rightfully won by Biden. Then we had Michael Cohen testifying in New York and his lawyers calling him a liar for dropping all the bombshells. Finally, we have those House and the Speaker's race. Tom Emmer gets the nod to run for Speaker, but the jackasses, the crazy eights, and the few who fear them will not back him. So like any sane person, he drops. I think you give him way too much credit. Tom Emmer is a piece of shit. I just hope that the sheep will remember all of this crap in 2024 when it's time to reelect all of these asshats. Thanks for letting me vent, Joe. All right, Joe, thank you very much. I appreciate all the emails. You know, when I have the types of shows I've had, I get backed up on emails, but I like to cover all the emails because you have such great input and insights. I think it adds a lot to the show, and I'm appreciative of it. So keep the emails coming. All you have to do is send them to rationalboomer@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to read them. All right. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. And for those folks that are watching the podcast on YouTube, the video version of the podcast, you're probably thinking to yourself, that mic looks a little extra scruffy today. And it's true. I haven't shaved for about a day and a half because I was busy with a 3-year-old. And, we were in a suite, the four of us, and getting extra time in the bathroom was a little hard. I said, fuck it, I'm just not going to shave, which is not how I usually do it. I shave every day because it bugs me to do this. Because, there's a lot of people, a lot of guys who don't shave for a couple of days and they look really cool. I don't shave for a couple of days. I look like a level 3 sex offender. So that's not the way I like to go with it. But nonetheless, here I am, and this is the way I look. Tomorrow will be better. I promise you. So, as we were talking about in the first half of the podcast, the big news story is that Mark Meadows, former President Donald Trump's chief of staff, has reportedly been granted immunity to testify under oath in the Department of Justice case against Trump and his allies regarding their efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, this is a huge deal. You have to remember that Mark Meadows was the linchpin of this whole thing. He was Donald Trump's chief of staff. He knows everything that went on. He also was the conduit for all the people that wanted to talk to Donald Trump on January 6th and leading up to it. You remember, nobody contacted Donald Trump directly. It was always through Mark Meadows. I'm talking about sitting members of Congress. I'm talking about Ginny Thomas, his own kids. Nobody got to him directly. They had to go through Mark Meadows. So Mark Meadows knows everything. Interesting thing about Mark Meadows, he was as bad as anybody as far as trying to peddle the lie. His whole book that he wrote and put out recently, he basically said it's all lies because he's saying the opposite now. So if you bought the book expecting anything good in it, well, it's all fucking lies. Now, the interesting thing, Meadows had spoken with special counsel Jack Smith's team at least 3 times this year. This just didn't happen yesterday. It's been going on for a while, and that's why we hadn't heard from Mark Meadows. We all presumed that he flipped, but there was no verification of that. Now we have it. And of course, he spoke in front of a grand jury as well, which occurred only after the Republican was given immunity. This comes from ABC News on Tuesday, citing sources familiar with the matter. Bloomberg later confirmed the report. According to the reports, Meadows told prosecutors that he repeatedly warned Trump ahead of the 2020 election that the allegations of voter fraud were unsubstantiated. Mark Meadows knew. Mark Meadows told Donald Trump. So theoretically, Donald Trump knew. He just chose to ignore it and still try to bull his way through. Now, Trump claimed, despite heaping evidence showing otherwise, that the 2020 election was fraudulent and that he was the rightful winner of the race that went to Joe Biden. Meadows was one of the many Trump loyalists who publicly backed his tirades at the time. Yeah, he was as loud and proud as anybody. Mark Meadows was perpetuating the lie. Now, the chief of staff also told Smith's team that Trump was being dishonest with the public on November 3rd, 2020, when he first began alleging that he won the election before all the votes were even tallied. That dishonesty, however, did not stop Meadows from supporting the president and helping spread election lies. Now, Cassidy Hutchinson, Meadows' former aide, testified before the House committee investigating the 2021 Capitol riot that her boss warned things might get real, real bad on January 6th. Now, how did he know that? Mark Short, who was the chief of staff for the former Vice President Mike Pence, told CNN that Meadows was a ringleader for much of what unfolded politically around January 6th, 2021. With that in mind, and you think about him getting immunity, he's got some shit to give. They don't give immunity out willy-nilly. In fact, it's rarely given out. And in this case, they must have gotten a lot from Mark Meadows. Now, because Smith's team granted him immunity, any information that Meadows testified before the grand jury cannot be used against him in federal prosecution. While he was not charged in the Justice Department's case, Meadows was indicted alongside Trump and 17 others, of course, in Fulton County on charges that he tried to undo the election there. And at this point, he hasn't cut any deal with Fani Willis. I'm sure he would if he could get away with it. The question is, does Fani Willis need him? And if she doesn't need him, she's just not going to let him get off the hook. The former chief of staff was responsible for setting up the infamous phone call between Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, when then president demanded Raffensperger give him 11,780 votes. Meadows has pleaded not guilty in the Georgia probe and is awaiting trial after a judge denied his request to move his case to federal court. As I said early in the podcast, this is interesting because this isn't just bad news for Donald Trump, Meadows having flipped. As it's just stated, Meadows was in that phone call with Brad Raffensperger and Donald Trump. He knows what happened there. He knows what precipitated that call. He knows what the intentions of Donald Trump were in that phone call. So that's a problem for him in Georgia, where he's not pled out as yet. He's indicted, and we're still waiting to find out when that trial will be. But in addition, in Washington, D.C., of course, as I said, he was the conduit to Donald Trump from everybody, sitting members of Congress. We've got family members, Eric and Don Jr. We've got people around him like Ginny Thomas and Roger Stone. There's a lot of people that are going to go down for this. And I was wondering, initially when I heard that he gave him immunity, I thought for a moment that that just happened. Turns out that's not the case. And I was thinking that if it just happened, it might give us a clue of something else. We know superseding indictments are coming out. We know that Mark Meadows would have been one of those people in the superseding indictments. So I was curious as to why the timing of it coming out now. And what I thought at the time, and it may still be the case, but if they cut this deal some time ago, it kind of negates what I'm going to say here, but I'll offer it up. You remember last week, there were a lot of rumors that Jack Smith was going to court, the grand jury, and he was issuing some sealed indictments, which would suggest there are superseding indictments. Now, I've found no verification that actually happened. It was just being reported by everybody, but I haven't seen it happen. Anyway, my thought is, if Mark Meadows had just cut that deal, it might suggest that those superseding indictments are coming quickly. Now, I would presume they're going to be coming fairly quickly anyway, and I don't know if it had anything to do with Mark Meadows flipping, but understand one thing, the fact that Mark Meadows flipped, bad news for Donald Trump and anybody else that was communicating with him, because Jack Smith will have it all: text messages, emails, phone conversations, and it'll all be compliments of Mark Meadows. At this point, as I'm recording this, I haven't heard any response from Donald Trump regarding Mark Meadows. I remember when he said that Sidney Powell wasn't his lawyer, but everything he's ever said, and any documentation would suggest otherwise. So I'm just waiting for him to say, well, I barely know Mark Meadows, which would be an absolute lie because he was his chief of staff. Nobody would have been closer to Donald Trump than his chief of staff. Now, if this stuff wasn't bad enough, we've got this whole thing going on in New York, this civil suit. And while he won't go to jail for any of this, he might be financially destroyed. In fact, I'm sure he's going to be financially destroyed. And yesterday was kind of a big day because there was a courtroom showdown 5 years in the making. Donald Trump's fixer turned foe, Michael Cohen, testified Tuesday that he worked to boost the supposed value of the former president's assets to whatever number Trump told us. So Michael Cohen testified in the civil suit today. Donald Trump was there, looking him right in the eyes, mean mugging that bitch, trying to intimidate him. Somebody ought to tell Donald Trump he's not as tough as he once thought he was. Everybody's running away from him, flipping on him, and he's all but done. Now, the face-to-face encounter between Trump and Michael Cohen. Now, you got to remember, Michael Cohen, since leaving Trump's employ, is now disbarred as a lawyer. He can't be a lawyer. Of course, he's written some books and he's a podcaster now, so anybody can be a fucking podcaster, including me. Cohen did spend some time in prison and became a prominent witness against his former boss in venues from courthouses to Congress. Now Cohen is a key figure in the New York Attorney General Letitia James lawsuit alleging that Trump and his companies duped banks, insurers, and others, giving them financial statements that inflated his wealth. Now, Cohen said, I was tasked by Mr. Trump to increase the total assets based on a number that he arbitrarily elected. Cohen testified, saying that he and former Trump Organization finance chief Alan Weisselberg labored to reverse engineer the various different asset classes, increase those assets in order to achieve a number that Mr. Trump had tasked us. Think about that. I got a $10 million building there. Yeah, make it look like it's worth 30. So I can get better loans, or make that $10 million building $5 million so I can save on taxes. That's what Donald Trump basically did, up and down, back and forth, had his people doing it, and they didn't even blink twice, including Michael Cohen. And Cohen was asked, well, what that number was. And Cohen said, whatever number Trump told us. Now, of course, Trump denies this. And Donald Trump was kind of freaking out in court. But he stayed relatively quiet. You know, he didn't lose it in court. But of course, Trump denies James' allegation outside court. He dismissed Cohen's account as the words of a proven liar who pleaded guilty to tax evasion, lying to Congress, and campaign finance violations. Yeah, but Donnie, you forget he was doing it for you. He went to court for you. He lied for you. And that's why he went to jail. And you hung him out to twist in the wind. So not surprising he's coming back at you. Trump said, I'm not worried about all this testimony. He's not a credible witness. Yeah. How about Alan Weisselberg? How about Weisselberg's assistant? Donnie, you're in fucking trouble. You already lost the case. Do you not realize that? The former president and Republican 2024 frontrunner voluntarily came to court for the highly anticipated testimony, attending the Manhattan trial for a 6-day this month. Cohen has said he hadn't seen Trump in 5 years. Cohen said, heck of a reunion. Earlier, he had insisted outside the court that this is not about Donald Trump versus Michael Cohen or Michael Cohen versus Donald Trump. This is about accountability, plain and simple. Now, as Cohen testified, Trump at times whispered to his lawyers. At other points, the former president hunched forward in his seat, watching intently or leaned back with crossed arms. Oh, he's intimidating. Cohen, meanwhile, looked away from his former employer, keeping his eye on the state lawyer, Colleen Faraday. Trump, Cohen said, would summon him and Weisselberg and say, for example, I'm actually not worth $4.5 billion. I'm really worth more of 6, Cohen said. And the finance chief would then inflate the value of Trump's properties by pegging them to comparable real estate that was actually different, brand new developments with higher ceilings, more sweeping views, and no rent regulation. For instance, drawing emphatic head shaking from Trump. I didn't say that. Yeah, you did, Donnie. Fuck you. Cohen said Weisselberg indicated that he spoke to Donald Trump Jr. and siblings Eric and Ivanka Trump before preparing their father's financial statements. So they knew about it. Now, the two sons, of course, are defendants in this lawsuit and deny any wrongdoing. An appeals court dismissed Ivanka Trump from the case in June. Judge Arthur Engeron already has ruled that Trump and his company committed fraud. This trial involves remaining claims of conspiracy, insurance fraud, and falsifying business records. Now, Trump says his assets were actually undervalued, and he maintained that disclaimers on his financial statements essentially told recipients to check the number out themselves. Two things I love. I didn't overvalue these things. I undervalued them. Okay, well, then you lied to the IRS and you did it to save or cheat on taxes. Either way you go, Donnie, it's a fucking crime. Somebody's got to tell him what he's talking about because he doesn't know. And then he tries to make the explanation by saying that he had disclaimers. And the disclaimers went on his taxes and basically said, yeah, we don't know if any of this is true, but here's the taxes. So he thinks that gets him out of trouble because he told the IRS on the front page, yeah, none of this makes any sense and none of it's true, but here you go. I don't know how in this twisted mind he thinks that makes it better for him. It doesn't. Now, he's derided the case as a sham, a scam, and a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. Trump argues that the case is part of an effort by James and other Democrats to drag down his campaign. Well, Donnie, here's the fucking deal. You announced that you were running for president 2 years before the election, far before anybody did it in this particular campaign or ever in history, I think. And you did it specifically because you thought it was going to protect you with regards to the law. Well, Donnie, you fucked around and found out it hasn't protected you one bit. And all the money you're now collecting, which is probably dwindling by now, is going to pay your lawyers, and you've got zero money to campaign for president. Yes, you got a big lead in the Republican primary, but keep in mind, in 2020, you lost by 7 million votes to Joe Biden. Since that time, the Republicans have overturned Roe v. Wade, fucked around and made getting guns easier. They've had ridiculous investigations and hearings that have been nothing but an embarrassment. I just ask anybody, Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes in 2020. What is it that he's done since 2020 that got him back those 7 million votes and then some? He's done nothing. Everything he's done has cost him votes. Hell, he endorsed Jim Jordan to be Speaker of the House, and he couldn't even fucking win that. All right, another lawyer flips on Donald Trump. And this is one woman I don't have any sympathy for. She was a flat out liar. She knew she was lying, and now she's crying and feeling bad. Oh, I made a mistake. You really made a mistake, bitch. A tearful Jenna Ellis implicated Rudy Giuliani and disavowed Donald Trump as she pleaded guilty in the Georgia election subversion case. Now, we know Jenna's mad at Donald Trump because he's not paying her legal bills. A woman scorned, I guess you could say. The former Trump campaign lawyer delivered a statement in tears Tuesday at her Fulton County plea hearing. Isn't that funny? She's in tears, and these are the fuckers that would call us the snowflakes. This is where she expressed regret for her work on behalf of the former president that was aimed at overturning his 2020 election. She wishes she never met up with Donald Trump and never took the job. Well, when you had the job, you seemed pretty enthusiastic, and you threw out the lies as well as Donald Trump ever did. She said, if I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post challenges. I look back on this experience with deep remorse. Well, here's the thing. Once you took the job and you realized what was going on at that moment, you could have walked out. You could have backed off, but you didn't. You kept trying to shove it down the throats of the American people. And now that you've got caught, and now that you could go to prison, you're crying, playing the victims. Oh, so typical of Republicans. I failed to do my due diligence, he added. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believe that challenging the results on behalf of the president should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability, who is a fucking criminal, who is a treasonist, who is an insurrectionist. You backed him all the way, and you sat there on those media outlets with that smirk on your face, thinking you knew what the fuck was up. You just found out you don't know fuck all about fuck all, and now you must pay the price. So now you're going to plead out. Maybe you'll get probation, maybe you won't. But you did what you did, and you deserve everything you get and probably then some. Now, Ellis pointed a finger at Giuliani in her plea agreement by admitting she aided and abetted the fellow Trump lawyer's false statements to Georgia legislators at a December 20 hearing, acknowledging she was assisting with the execution of the hearing with Giuliani and co-defendant Ray Smith, also a former Trump campaign lawyer. Oh, Jenna, we feel so fucking bad for you. You're part of the reason why this country is where it is right now, because you took something you knew was a lie and you pushed it forward for your own benefit. Do not fucking cry right now, because I have no sympathy for you. You tried to overturn an election, overthrow this country. You were part and parcel to this whole fucking thing. You should go to jail. You shouldn't have the chance to plead out, but you did, and we'll see what happens with that. But whatever you get, you fucking deserve. All right, the whole Speaker of the House thing. That's been problematic for the Republicans. We've been 3 months without a Speaker of the House, which means nothing gets done. And we've got a few important things going on. The war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza. We've got a budget deal that we've got to get figured out by November 15th, or the country shuts down. So how do the Republicans respond to it? They can't elect a Speaker of the House. They can't do anything. Now, we know the Republicans are a do-nothing party, but this is fucking ridiculous. Now, earlier, Tom Emmer of Minnesota won the race to be the next party nominee for Speaker Tuesday, but then withdrew his candidacy within hours when it became clear that not enough Republicans would support him. Probably less Republicans than Jim Jordan got. And it's due to the fact that Donald Trump came out and says he doesn't like Tom Emmer. Now, I'm a little disappointed to hear some of the emailers saying that Tom Emmer was a reasonable choice. He was not. He's anti-abortion. He's a election denier. But one of the reasons why Donald Trump doesn't like Tom Emmer is that he voted to certify the election, which is what he should have done. He simply did his fucking job. But that's not before he pushed out all this information about how the election was stolen and all that bullshit. Tom Emmer's was not a reasonable choice to be Speaker of the House. He would have not, There's no way he would have gotten one Democratic vote. And like I say, he probably would have gotten fewer votes than Jim Jordan because now MAGA hates him. And most of the reasonable-minded Republicans wouldn't vote for the fucker either. Now, Representative Lance Gooden said, "We're moving on to the next phase." How many phases do you need? This is like your fourth candidate. Emmer beat out more conservative alternatives in a series of votes behind closed doors, but then failed at a test ballot to see if he could muster 217. And he decided, I'm not going to be embarrassed by this. His prospects, of course, grew dimmer after former President Donald Trump on Monday said he was staying out of the messy House Speaker selection process and unloaded on Emmer in a social media post. "I have many wonderful friends wanting to be Speaker of the House, and some are truly great warriors." Rhino Tom Emmer, who I do not know well, is not one of them, Trump posted on Truth Social, using an acronym for Republican in name only, Rhino. Voting for a globalist rhino like Tom Emmer would be a tragic mistake. There's where he lost out on the MAGA vote. And without the MAGA vote, he doesn't have anywhere near enough votes because, as I say, reasonable-minded Republicans aren't going to vote for him because of what he stands for or what he stood for, and the Democrats wouldn't even think twice about it. If they were going to cut a deal with the Republicans, guaranteed it would not be Tom Emmer. Rather than head to the House floor for another embarrassing public vote, Republicans stayed in their meeting room where Emmer's holdouts began to air their grievances. It's not clear how anyone could unite the House GOP. The day started with 8 candidates. The lowest polling lawmaker dropped out after each round of voting. Emmer began the day with 78 votes on the first ballot. Remember, you need 217 votes to become Speaker of the House, so he was way off. And then he gradually increased his tally as the number of contestants shrank. In the final vote, he won against Representative Mike Johnson by a vote of 117 to 97. Now, several members of the GOP said Emmer lost around 20 Republicans. Excuse me. Around 20 Republicans during the subsequent test ballot, though they were unsure of the final tally. Republicans control 221 House seats, meaning the defections put Emmer far below the 217 votes he needed to become Speaker. Now, of course, the House is no longer functioning as a legislative body, and they're kind of important. We can get nothing done, and there's a lot of things that need to be done, but we can't do that now. Now, Representative Mike Gallagher, a Republican from Wisconsin, told reporters Tuesday, "Look at the last 2 weeks. It seems like nobody can get to 217. Oh, yeah? Well, Mike, I said that to everybody 3 weeks ago. Nobody can get to 217. The fundamental problem for Republicans is that right-wing factions oppose any compromise with Democrats, even though bipartisan compromise is inevitable since Democrats control the Senate. Any speaker candidate who placates the hardliners such as Jim Jordan alienates moderates who sank Jordan's speaker bid last week." See, that's the thing. Even if they get a MAGA Republican as Speaker of the House and they pass something crazy, no way it passes the Senate. So they can't even get something passed on their own. But even if they did, if they got anything like they wanted passed, no way it passes the Senate. It's just not going to get done. It is a fucking mess. Now, Republicans' ongoing failure to organize themselves could eventually make a bipartisan governing coalition more likely, especially as a government funding deadline approaches. Representative Dusty Johnson said Emmer was doing a good job of addressing objections to his candidacy, which include the fact that he has long been a member of the previous leadership team. He does not have 217 votes now. I would tell you, I think he's moving the room. Representative Troy Nehls, Republican from Texas, suggests that Trump be named Speaker to break the logjam. Otherwise, he said, Republicans are back where they started from in the selection process. I mean, what are we going to do? Go down and just put everybody's name in the damn hat, he asked. Well, that's pretty much what you're doing right now. And what makes you think Donald Trump could get 217 votes? He'd get less votes than Jim Jordan. It's amazing to me that anybody would even spew that out of their mouth. Now, just before doing the podcast, of course, I let you know that there's a new nominee for the Republican Party. He is Mike Johnson. He came in second to Tom Emmer. It's the only option they've got. And some people are thinking, well, maybe he's got a chance. Maybe he's got some possibility of doing it. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. He is a full-fledged Trump humper. No question about it. He voted to steal the election. He voted for not certifying the Electoral College. He wants a nationwide abortion ban. He opposes same-sex marriage. He supports Trump's Muslim ban and opposes marijuana legalization, among other things. Okay, let's say MAGA likes him, but we know that MAGA is, in fact, a small minority of the Republican caucus in the House. Do you think everybody else is going to vote for this fuck? They aren't going to vote for him any more than they would have voted for Emmer. And do you think the Democrats would agree to some compromise using this fuck, Mike Johnson? I think not. Now, last I heard, I'm at about 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning. But the last I heard, there's supposed to be a vote at noon Eastern time, 11 my time, on this Mike Johnson. No way he gets 217 votes. It's just not going to happen. And then we're still going to be stuck without a Speaker of the House and no real prospects for Speaker of the House, because Democrats are never going to vote for Republicans, especially when they keep putting in these Trump-la-fuck jerks. Normal-minded Republicans aren't going to side with MAGA either. And if they do get a reasonable person, then MAGA won't side with that person. So the Republicans as a caucus, there is nobody that can get 217 votes. I can only hope that 6 or 7 Republicans go over to the Democrats and say, we got to get this fucking done. What's the best deal we can cut? Can we get some reasonable-minded Republican that you can stand with? Or do we have to just go and vote for Hakeem Jeffries and call it a day? I'd be really surprised if they pulled something like that off. That would be devastating to the Republican Party. And these people would have to be more concerned with our country and the government than they are their party. I mean, that's their job to do that, but that's not how they are. That's not who they are. So it's impossible to understand what they're going to do to get this done, but it's going to have to get done at some point in the not too distant future. We don't have time to fuck around with this anymore, especially with regards to the budget. We don't need the country shut down. MAGA may want that, but that's not going to play well for the Republicans. It's going to hurt them even more than they're already hurt. And to be perfectly honest, at this point, them trying to get over this hump and try to get some goodwill out of what they've done in the House of Representatives, that's pretty much done. They've accomplished nothing. They've had ridiculous investigations and hearings, and they can't even elect a Speaker of the House. This is who the Republicans are. And anybody with any common sense would say, now we need people who can actually put the work in. So let's put some Democrats in. All right, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.